My brother proposed to my fiance and she said this. My brother, Mark, used to date my fiance, Jen, a year ago. They dated back in August 2022. They were only together for a month before he broke things off with her because he was bored of being in a relationship and never really wanted to settle down anyway. At the time they were dating I was in a different state, so I had no idea he even had a girlfriend, and I had no idea who Jen was until I met her. Jen and I met at a bar when I moved back in October and hit it off really well. She was easily the most beautiful and intelligent woman I ever met, and we met up a few times more before we made it official. Fast forward to December and I finally bring her up to my family and propose meeting her at Christmas. They knew I was in a relationship, but I'm not the most open about my personal life, so I kept details about her to a minimum until I knew how serious we really were. My parents asked to see pictures and they started passing my phone around the dinner table. Mark saw it and blew up, calling me a poop brother for dating his ex-girlfriend, and he demanded I break it off with her. I refused. When I asked Jen about it, she confirmed they dated and gave me the details about their breakup. It took a few weeks, but eventually Mark stopped bringing up me dating his ex and I thought he was over it. On Jen's birthday this year, I took her out to a fancy dinner with both of our families and her closest friends and I asked her to marry me. Mark flipped once again and blew up about me proposing to her, which I and my sisters immediately shut down. The incident happened this past weekend. Mark had been pretty quiet about the whole thing for the last 2 months. I didn't see him much and figured he went low contact with me, which I had no problem with. Then he invited me and Jen for family dinner at his apartment with my parents and sisters. I thought it was weird, but my parents and sisters were also going, so we agreed to go. The dinner was nice, nothing too fancy, and we moved to the living room to talk. About 30 minutes into normal conversation, Mark stood up and told us he had an announcement. He made a long speech about being happy to have his family around for his big moment, then got on one knee and pulled out this cheap ring while asking Jen to marry him. Jen was confused and obviously uncomfortable and demanded that he put it away and stand up. My dad tried to make a grab for Mark, but I got to him first and punched him. I won't repeat most of it, mostly because I was too angry to even listen to most of it, but he said something along the lines of wanting to show me that Jen wasn't really into me and just wanted to get back at him. Mind you, Jen never mentioned him until I asked if they had dated, and at family events, she was uncomfortable around him because he dumped her for the pettiest reason. So all in all, he was not living rent-free in her mind like he thought he did. Before it could get worse, my parents rushed me out and promised to talk to him. It's been a few days since it happened and I'm still pissed off. I don't know what to do at this point. I'm scared Jen might have second thoughts marrying me because of this. Any advice? My brother proposed to my fiance and she said this. I called Mark and asked him to meet up with me at my place to talk. I told him I would prefer Jen to be around for the talk as well, but I was cool with it if he didn't want her there. He agreed to talk to both of us and showed up at my place around noon today. It was pretty quiet for a few minutes before I started the conversation. I apologized for not warning him I would be proposing to Jen, and I apologized for hitting him. He said it was whatever, but he appreciated the apology. I told him what Jen had said about the relationship and breakup when I asked her about it, and I asked him to confirm if it was true. I pretty much said that his reaction throughout the whole thing has been extreme and I wanted to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding their relationship or downplaying how serious they were. He confirmed that they only dated for a few weeks and he broke up with her because he lost interest. Jen asked if he was acting like this because he still had feelings or regrets about ending things with her. He said he could admit he thought she was more attractive than when he last saw her, but there weren't any feelings or regrets. He said he just didn't like seeing a girl he dated, even if it was short term, with his older brother, and as a man I shouldn't have violated him by pursuing things with his ex. I reminded him that I had no idea they dated, so it wasn't like I consciously did this knowing their history together. He shrugged me off and said it didn't matter, I still should have broken it off. He was adamant that if the roles were reversed he would have done the same thing, which I doubt. I asked him why he proposed to her if he didn't have any lingering feelings. Basically, to sum it up, he was talking about it to one of his buddies who was around when Mark and Jen dated, and the guy put the idea in his head that maybe Jen knew from the start that we were related and was doing this to get back at him, considering Jen had been hung up on him after they ended. He and his friend thought it would be a good idea to test it and see if they were right, so he came up with the idea to propose and see if she dumped me for him. Jen asked him to elaborate on why he thought she was hung up on him, and he told her that he heard she was asking about him following the breakup and still hanging out at the places they used to go to, so it was a valid assumption. Then for her to pop up randomly with his brother affirmed his suspicions. Jen told him she'd only asked about him once following the breakup and she'd been hanging out at those places with friends before they started dating and she wouldn't avoid them because of a breakup. She also told him she was offended at the idea that she would go as low as to pursue me, just to get back at him. He shrugged and gave her a half apology but said she had to see it from his point of view. He asked her if she really didn't know and she told him that she didn't see the resemblance in us until we were in the same room and we act nothing alike, so it never crossed her mind, and he said okay. That pretty much wrapped up the conversation. He did tell me before he left that I could take back his invite to the wedding because he can't bring himself to support our relationship knowing he used to date her. I told him he didn't have to worry about that as he was most likely going to be uninvited anyway. It's been a few hours since our talk and I do feel better. My parents aren't too happy about him being uninvited, but they understood that it was a mutual decision and probably for the best. My sisters told me they knew he didn't have a good reason for being an a-hole and they don't blame me for not wanting him at the wedding. As of now, I'm going to limit contact with Mark and I doubt he'll reach out to me anytime soon either. I will leave my adoptive family overnight. All I leave them there will be a letter. I was adopted by a family when I was 5. I don't know my biological parents. The family already had 3 girls. Apparently after the first girl they tried for a boy, but it always ended up being a girl, so after 3 girls they adopted me to finally have a son. In the first few years of my life they treated us all well. My sisters, however, were never able to accept me. They saw me as an outsider who doesn't belong in the family. Actually, it was the oldest one, Alicia, who poisoned the other two, Maria and Juliet, against me by telling them that our parents would treat me better because I was a boy, which wasn't true. In fact, all three of them protested against me getting a room on the same floor as them. And my parents gave in. There was a spare room in the basement where I had to sleep now. This, however, just led to them making fun of me, calling me names like cellar rat and many more things. I just shrugged it off, assuming that's how siblings treated each other. But I realized that having my sleeping room in the basement somehow also affected the way my parents treated me. Sleeping down there felt like I was out of sight for them. They lost interest in me and I became less significant and important. While on the other hand, they started to focus more on my sisters. When I was 13, they completely lost interest in me. It was like I was a homeless person living in the basement. They missed all the appointments I had. They didn't care about my grades. They never even called me to eat. Sometimes I would come upstairs and see how they already took away the plates. If I was lucky, there were leftovers that I could eat. Do you think I got presents for my birthday? No, because they didn't even know my birthday in the first place. And last Christmas they said they forgot to buy presents for me, saying they will go shopping with me the next few weeks to get me something which, as you might expect, never happened. I don't feel despised towards my sisters. I'm glad they have a home where they are cared for and that they can feel loved. I just don't understand why they would adopt me if they just threw me away like a piece of paper. I think they just wanted to have this feeling to have a son for some time, but then realized they could never love me like one of their own. And putting me into the basement was the last straw. That is when they completely banished me from their minds. And I just can't do this anymore. I decided to pack my things and leave. I will do it tonight. I will stay at a friend's house for a while and try to look for a job that hopefully gets me enough money so that I can rent an apartment. And after that I will never look back. I decided to leave a letter behind in my room. I wouldn't be surprised if they never even find it, let alone notice that I'm gone. I don't know why I even write this here in the first place. I feel so desperate. Maybe I want this because I hope that someone is interested in me and my story. Go to part 2. I will leave my adoptive family overnight. All I leave them there will be a letter. The evening before my adoptive parents went to bed, I snuck into their bedroom and took all the documents that I could find and waited for nightfall. I packed my things and left when all of them were asleep. Everything went as planned. I silently left the house and went to my best friend's home. He had an apartment in a neighboring city, so I had to walk for a while. I arrived at his apartment between 2 and 3 a.m. He had a spare bedroom that he used for visitors who might want to stay for the night. We agreed that I could live with him as long as I wanted. He only expects me to find a job quickly, and if I do that, he wants me to help him pay the rent for it. I was fine with that. I slept through the night, and in the morning I started looking for jobs immediately. But now, a few hours later, something more than interesting happened. While I was on his laptop still looking through the online job advertisements and collecting them, the doorbell rang. He opened the door and I heard a familiar voice. But it wasn't one of my parents. It was one of my sisters. Maria, to be exact. The middle sister. I heard her ask if I was here. He wanted to lie for me, but I decided to talk to her to find out what she wanted. So I appeared behind him and she winked, "Thank God you're here," and hugged me. I was completely overwhelmed and surprised and didn't know what to say, and then she told me how she found me, and this is where things get more interesting. She told me that this morning a way too familiar sounding story appeared on her TikTok For You page. Apparently my story was shared by a TikTok account who actually had a quite big audience. And she became even more suspicious of the situation when her and the name of her sisters were also mentioned. To be sure about the situation, she went into the basement and into my room, where she found the room mostly empty and of course my letter. I mentioned in the story that I would stay with a friend, so she went out looking for me, telling our parents she was about to visit a friend. She said she drove to 2 different houses before finding the correct address. She apparently visited 2 other friends of mine before finding the correct apartment. Apparently she also took the letter with her. She said she hasn't shown her parents the letter yet and wanted to talk to me first. No one besides her knew where I was or what I did last night. She apologized to me and offered to talk with her on my side to our parents. She explained that the way I talked about her in the original post made her feel bad. She said she never hated me or anything. She admitted that she also protested against me having a room on their floor, but just because of Alicia's influence on her and because she believed her lies when she was younger. Now that I think about it, unlike Alicia and Juliet, she never called me bad names. She said that Juliet probably also is just insufferable because of how Alicia manipulated her. She said she never realized how bad I was treated. She never gave a second thought about me because Alicia spread rumors that I was just very socially awkward and overall didn't like any of them, and that I would just lock myself inside the basement like the worst introvert and all of that. And as a reason for her claims, she just reminded them that I was adopted, and that is why I would try to make myself the outsider. I said to her that this might explain why she and Juliet might have been like that to me, but not why my parents would have behaved that way. She replied that she also can just make claims here without any proof, but she thinks it's because even between them Alicia is the golden child as the firstborn. Her and Juliet are only the failed attempts of them having a boy. And her being the golden child made it easier for her to manipulate both of them into believing the lies she told them. Then she said that she knows that mom and dad would be pretty easy to manipulate if you know how. And then she gave me 4 options. I could come with her right now and talk with her to my parents. She would let me think about it and leave, but not tell my parents. I refused to go back with her entirely, but she would tell them about the letter without telling them where to find me. I refused to go back with her entirely, but she would pretend to not know anything but maybe stay in contact with me. I picked option 2 and she gave me her number. She said that if I decided to give them a chance she would support me, but she would understand if I refused to. And now we are here. I don't know what to do. I would lie if I said I wasn't tempted to give them a chance, but on the other hand, if it's true that Alicia is the one behind all of that, I don't know if I want to deal with her again. Go to part 3. I will leave my adoptive family overnight. All I leave them there will be a letter. Today I got a call from Alicia. And apparently nothing is what it seems to be. I still try to process this call. I've been in contact with Maria for a few days and I truly thought she was different, but she was just like the others. When I got the call today, it was an unknown number. I froze when I heard Alicia's voice. She screamed at me saying, "Who the HLL do I think I am to talk about her like that?" We had a little argument but somehow managed to calm down. I thought about hanging up, but I wondered what she wanted from me. She told me to grow up. I was never part of their family according to her, and that I should have known about it since the beginning. She told me to stop crying about it now when I could have done something about it the entire time. I admit I was angry and not very nice. I told her to go F herself and told her I was going to get Maria out of there too because both us wouldn't deserve a life around someone like her. Then she said something I guess she shouldn't have said. She said that I was ridiculous because Maria was a part of all of this theater, and if I truly thought mom and dad cared about me, then I was a stupid bitch. Then she accused me of trying to ruin her family and told me what really happened after I left. They tried to save their face. Maria hasn't told me the full story. Apparently it's true that she was the one who found my story on TikTok by accident, and she also found the letter first. In Maria's version of the story, she lied to mom and dad and told them she was about to visit her friend when she was looking for me and they didn't know about it. But Alicia said that Maria told mom and dad immediately after finding my letter. This also answers the question how Maria knew about my friend's address. I never told this to anyone except my adoptive mom. They thought that if they fooled me into thinking I had someone on my side, it would be easier for them to get to me because they assumed I probably wouldn't open the door for them. I couldn't believe it and asked why I would believe someone like her, to which she replied, "Who do you think gave me your number?" Then she demanded that I take down my posts and hung up. Honestly, I kinda believe her. But it also proves that they are all the same. They try to manipulate me to get back with them to save their reputation. Many of you guys warned me about this, but even after everything that happened, I didn't want to believe someone could be this evil. But that's it. I will cut any contact with them. I am not taking my posts down. Everyone deserves to know what these people are. I cannot believe I tried so desperately to see the good in them. I also apologize to my friend for offering a room that wasn't mine to begin with. I understand your critique about this, and you are right. I crossed a line there. With that being said, the chapter Adoptive Dickhead Family is hopefully closed now. I try to focus on my life and maybe someday I will find someone who truly loves me. Refuse to pay me? I'll make all your websites refuse to work. I used to work for some kind of full-stack agency as a coder, doing websites, desktop applications and integrations for customers. Life was good and it even got better. After managing to provide an important customer with 5-star hotels all around my country with a great website with integration to their remote platform and also mobile solutions which didn't exist then in my country, a headhunter had found me. He offered nearly triple the salary I was getting and it was impossible to say no to that. I informed my employer and gave him a generous notice of a month so I could wrap up the last projects. Let me warn you that I was a very young and incredibly trusting person then. When my employer told me there were some problems and I'd have to receive my last salary with the next one, I accepted. Last day of my job, when he asked me to sign the paper that declared I had nothing indebted to me by that company, I signed it. I was a moron. I was young. They never paid, of course. Even though being stiff that way there was a lump in my throat, I tried to gulp it down. I worked hard at my new job, trying to prove that I could do better than I did before. But another sneak attack from my ex-employers was the last drop. One day when I arrived at the job, my new employer called me to his room. He explained that my ex-employer reached out to him and told him that I was lazy, a liar, worthless, and it wasn't worth the effort to have me as an employee because they were about to sue me so I wouldn't be able to do any work with all the legal stuff. I was beet red. I apologized for being a nuisance and I said I'd clear my desk instantly. He laughed cheerfully and said, "You've been working for me for 2 weeks. You completed 2 high-quality websites and half of a desktop app. I'll cut my own throat before I fire you." Still, I was so shaken that he had to give permission for me to leave early. I went home and cried, not because of sorrow, but rage. I couldn't touch them. I just couldn't. I couldn't? That's the day I fired up Google and typed how to hack for the first time in my life. The first response was a forum in my native language. I started reading and gosh, I had a lot to read. Coding and hacking are, even though they share the same expertise, very different when it comes to details. I confess, it was then impossible for me to think like them, but thankfully the forum crawled with helpful technical tutorials telling me hows and whys of every exploit I could use. As I said, I was young and a moron. Back then I had my own mini admin framework that I used in every website I made, and I just realized there was a crucial mistake I made in calls to create new records, users, pages, news items, galleries, everything. I wasn't checking the authorization at all. It would be nearly impossible for a hacker to use this because he wouldn't know or get exposed to the exact call, but I knew it. It was about 6 in the morning when I finished reading. I used public transportation to go to the other end of the city. I found an internet cafe where the young attendant didn't care about IDs and which didn't have any security cameras. I sat in a corner and started breaking every single website I made for them. There was one about pastry materials, a website consisting of over 1,000 ingredients. In the main page a random assortment from each ingredient type would be shown as a gallery. I replaced about 20 of them with images of human poop. Only 20, so a viewer who got used to it wouldn't realize the error until some time has passed. I made the chief physician of a hospital page the angel of death itself, with images and a special bio. People don't look into physician bio pages, so I was sure it wouldn't be found out for long. I made an announcement on an ultranationalist party's website that their #1 enemy would be giving a speech for them. In a local newspaper page I made all the old videos instead linked to the famous Loy Tuma video, where an anime girl spins a leek in her hand. Slowly, a few websites a day, I broke every single website I made for them, approximately 60 websites or so. The backlash from customers seems to have been furious, in a domino effect. My old boss had lost his customers' trust in his references, which simply means everything for this kind of job. Once the proud owner of one of the best agents in the region, he now works in a tiny office making a living doing third-rate websites with his meager skill. Even though I never met him during this period, one of my friends was working under him until the last moment. I loved listening to him struggle to find out how I did it. They knew I did it, they just had no way of proving it, while losing more and more customers every day. Am I the a-hole for selling my house without telling my wife? My wife and I have been married for many years, but before we got married, I had built up substantial wealth. When we got married, I opted for a prenuptial agreement and complete separation of assets. She also had significant premarital wealth. Besides the house we currently live in, I still own a beautiful apartment in the same city that I usually rent out, but it's currently vacant. Over the past 2 years, we've had many discussions about moving to a smaller town and getting a house near the beach. 2 months ago, we bought the house for our upcoming move. We've already made the renovations we wanted, bought furniture, and will be moving into the new house soon. Since we won't be living in this city anymore, I didn't see a reason to keep the house we currently live in and sold it without notifying my wife. Considering that it was solely my asset, I didn't see the need to inform her in advance. Besides, selling and buying property is always a stressful process. On the day I finalized the sale, I told her that I had sold the house, and she was furious with me for not letting her know. She mentioned that she still needs a residence in this city and intends to come here frequently. I explained to her that I still have the apartment, which we can use whenever we need to be in the city, so there shouldn't be an issue. She remains upset with me, claiming that I didn't treat her like a wife by not involving her in such an important decision. On the other hand, I believe I didn't leave her without an address in the city, and the house was always exclusively my asset, just as she has her own wealth. She argues that it's a completely different situation because it's the house we've been living in, and we're moving in the next few days.
Am I the a-hole for making my disabled nephew cry because he ruined my dresses? So, recently my aunt and her son came home to my country from Sweden. We have a spare room where my dresses are hung since my room is a little small. They're sort of hidden away on a rack in the corner, so you have to pull them out to see them. My aunt and my cousin were going to sleep there, which I didn't have a problem with. He's mentally handicapped and practically acts like a 7-year-old, which is a little annoying, but I don't blame him or anything. When I woke up in the morning it was really hot and everyone was downstairs, so I walked into the spare room to find a dress, only to find practically every single one with cuts and parts on the floor. I basically freaked out and instantly knew who it was, since my aunt and mom wouldn't do something like that. I stormed down the stairs and screamed at him, which attracted my aunt and mom to come immediately. I couldn't be calmed down at all, since I bought most of the dresses with my own money. He started crying and my aunt hugged him, trying to console him, whilst my mom started yelling at me for making him cry. He even admitted to it after a while, and even then they consoled him. My mom offered to pay for some, but it's only enough for like 10 dresses and I had over 30. Besides, I can't find some of my favorites in stores since we're getting closer to winter, and the fact that I was proud that I paid for it myself. Some of my family, including my mom and aunt, are all telling me I'm in the wrong and to apologize to him, but I really don't think I'm wrong.